power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Technica podcast feed.
Ooh, just when you thought it was safe to open up your podcast app once again, it is time for another episode of Sovryn Tech X, and that means that I am not alone because, you know, an X is made of two lines crossing. Bam! Yeah, and if I'm going to bam someone... no, wait. It's going to be Mrs. Ellen Sovryn. Woo.
Bam! Woo!
Yeah. And you're looking rather fetching right now.
Smashing. Thank you.
You are. Yeah, you're...
This is my New England Aquarium squid hat, and I love it so much, mostly because these eyes on the side are just so silly. Look at them stick out.
Yeah, I mean, you look like... I don't know, this is kind of messing with my head. I mean, not that I'm opposed to being a furry or anything, but... There's like a weird kind of Pokemon sexy vibe going on here. I don't know.
Oh, thank you. Is it the tentacles? I know you love tentacles.
Well, you love tentacles. Let's be clear here.
Okay, maybe. But you also love tentacles.
Are people going to be able to see this on your Instagram?
I bet they will.
Ooh, yes, that is right, folks. Let's talk about this. But Mrs. Sovryn and I, of course, those who are... well, actually, I brought it up in a recent release that I did... based upon a spirituality section, or the last three spirituality sections from the Sovryn Technica newsletter that I did. And I talked about it briefly there, how we are on social media. But yeah, we are back on social media. Otherwise, the patrons were the only ones that knew about this. And you can find all of it at our Linktree, which is Linktree at Zomia. So it's linktr.ee/Zomia, kind of like the good old Zomia 1 or Zomia Offline Games.
Or you can just find me as Mrs._Sovryn.
Is it that? I thought it was Ellen_Sovryn.
Oh, yes, it's Ellen_Sovryn.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm thinking of my DeviantArt account, which is Mrs.
Right.
Sovryn.
Right.
But this one I am Ellen Sovryn.
We'll have to get your DeviantArt account on the Linktree because you do amazing artwork.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah.
and I am planning on opening an Etsy shop whenever I get the freaking time to do that.
Woo!
Hopefully that'll be soon.
I
But
hear
we
that.
just got a scanner, so now I can actually take decent images of my artwork and put it up online.
Yeah, I almost jammed this thing with my elbow. It's gigantic. I've never seen anything this big outside of... There's no sexual innuendo there, folks. I mean, like, really, I've never seen anything this big outside of an office. I mean, it's just gigantic, which is wonderful.
Yes.
And it works very, very well.
Yeah, it's about half a ton, but it does the job.
Yeah, big cannon here. Amazingly, the way I built the studio desk, somehow there was just this perfect spot for it, almost like it was destiny.
It was fate
Yeah.
to fit in that little spot next to all of your Funko Pops.
Story of my life. But anyway, so...
Not to derail the conversation.
No, please.
But you are Lord Sovryn.
Yes. Yeah, you can find me at Lord Sovryn. I mean, all my social media accounts were nuked, years ago. So I don't have... Which, is kind of odd for me because my Instagram, at one point, I had about 5,000 followers. Because of Sovryn Tech and everything else that I was doing at the time, but yeah, no, it was starting off very, very modestly. But if you want to follow us there, again at Lord Sovryn, and you are at Ellen_Sovryn. I am also on Threads. You're not on Threads, are you?
No, I'm
Ellen?
not.
No, yeah. So, but I am also on Threads, which I've talked about all of this, why, in a Patreon episode. Not going to get into that here. If you have questions, maybe I'd talk about it more publicly or in another episode. But I'm also there. I'm also on Blue Sky. Again, you can find all of this on our Linktree, /Zomia. It's kind of an annoying thing to say out loud, Linktree, because it's a weird URL because it's linktr.ee, so it's the .ee domain name, but it's not like linktree.com/Zomia, which is what it should be, or what would be easiest. Anyway, just an odd thing. So yeah, we're there. Lots of stuff to check out. We've already posted many pictures, and yeah, and on Threads, spreading the good word of anarchism and everything else as well.
Yeah, so find us there if you want to creep on our lives and see what we're up to. And
Well, that's it. I mean, there's so many people who think because we're out in the sticks, And they're like, are they alive? Are they doing it? I mean, we put out episodes, but no, we're out there. We're doing plenty of things. Which brings me to another quick thing. I also did restart my Medium page, which you can also find that at Linktree, and all kinds of stuff getting posted there already and getting a lot of great reaction. Medium's a place where I already have a few hundred followers. So if you want to check that out, go for it. They have really awesome text-to-speech built right into Medium. I love it. Anyway, we're not going to talk about that. Let's talk about adventures. You might have shared one picture from this. I have some video that I'm going to be putting up eventually, but let's talk about some of our adventures that we've been having lately. And then we've got great subjects that we're finally going to get into that we even teased in previous Sovryn Tech X episodes, including we're going to talk about plants and are they alive? We might even talk about electric vehicles.
And are they alive?
And are they alive? Should be dead on arrival. But, well, anyway, we'll talk about that. But before we get into it, let's talk about some fun stuff. So you and I had the pleasure, it's concert season, right? As soon as summer starts, or getting close to summer anyway. And we ended up catching DreamSonic. And DreamSonic 2023 is being, it's Dream Theater. I mean, basically, you can explain it to me, Ellen. Did they say this is something they plan? This is like a package that they plan on doing every year, where it's like their own little kind of festival?
Yep, that's my understanding of it. I watched some videos where it was kind of described by the band members of each of the bands that are playing in DreamSonic, but essentially, Dream Theater organized Animals as Leaders and Devin Townsend and their band, and they're going to be doing this tour allegedly every year, which, if that's the case, I am stoked.
Yeah.
And it's not a guarantee that the band lineup is always going to be the same. I think they want to just have the best, most representative prog rock bands on stage and bring together all of these somewhat disparate fan bases and have them unite under this one large umbrella of DreamSonic.
Right.
So they can just have, this, like, what does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like when you have all of these sort of slightly different niches in progressive rock come together?
Yeah, sure. And they are. I mean, in fact, I was listening to a podcast interview with Devin Townsend, who you and I are both huge fans of.
I'd say that's an understatement.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'll give a little history on that in a second, but and in that interview with Devin Townsend, he was saying to the host, he's like, Dream Theater was just a band that never really crossed my radar, and then they finally came together, and which is so funny to me. And part of the reason that that's funny to me is, so I introduced you to both of these bands. I think that's fair to say. It was a day a few years ago, and we're down in the basement, and I'm like, here, I want you to hear the greatest song ever written. And I played Triumph, right, by Devin Townsend from the album Synkestra.
And the weird thing is that never clicked for me,
right.
And I didn't even remember it until like a couple years later when I was working in actually the job that I'm at now. It was a slow day, and I was looking through music, and the person I was working with, he's an old guy, but total metalhead.
Yep.
He's a fan of like all sorts, like Rob Zombie and Nikki Sixx and all these people, but he was like, yeah, I saw Devin Townsend at this local place, and I was like, Devin Townsend? So I looked it up, and I saw this album called Empath, and I was like, this just like calls to me, because what musician is focusing on that aspect of their personality? You know, most of them are like drugs, sex, and rock and roll, and the ego is the greatest thing ever. But this was like, I'm a person who cares about other people. And that just, as a rock album, was so curious to me that I listened to it. And like, it's the greatest album ever written, like, period. Empath,
you think so? From 2019, right? That's when that one came out?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. That's fair. I mean, now you were a Dream Theater fan before then.
Yeah, actually, I've known about Dream Theater for quite a few years. Like, it started out, I had an interest in prog rock. I was starting to get into it, and I was talking to some people at a social gathering, and somebody said, "Oh, have you ever heard of the Liquid Tension Experiment?
Oh, right.
You should check them out."
Right.
And I did, and it was really groovy. But then, I found out later on that the band members, or at least a few of them, had moved on to this new group called Dream Theater. And that was also an exciting exploration. And of course, you and I connected over Pull Me Under, which was like the greatest song that they've ever written.
Well, that's the thing, is that day when we were in the basement and I was playing that music for you, I first said, it's like, no, here's the greatest song ever done. Or what I used to think was the greatest song ever, which is Pull Me Under by Dream Theater. And I played that. And then I said, it's like, all right, but you're like, wow, that was amazing. But why isn't it the greatest song anymore? And I said, well, here's the song Triumph by Devin Townsend. And I played that. So it's just funny because the two, in my mind, equate each other very well. Like Dream Theater and Devin Townsend. I mean, I know Devin Townsend's a very unique animal, but I think in my mind they've been...
He's an animal.
He is. But in my mind they've been connected, musically, sonically, for an incredibly long time. And so it's just odd that, and I didn't know this till I heard that podcast with Devin. It's just odd that they never really cross paths, because I just feel like to me, they feel so similar. But anyway, now they finally have cross paths, and holy shit did they cross paths when they were on stage. Now, it opened up with Animals as leaders, which if anyone hasn't heard them yet, this is a 3-piece, no vocals, just a kick-ass...
Just jamming.
Just jamming, face-melting band. It's awesome.
Like when we saw them performing live, somebody behind us said, "This is LSD music, man. This is like trip music." And they're not wrong. I mean, it's fucking awesome. Like, I feel like I could listen to that music with my eyes closed and have a great time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's like stoner rock,
No, it's very meticulously written,
Right.
There's a lot of technical skill that goes into that.
Yes, but I mean, it's heavy. It's not King Gizzard. It's not like any... I mean, it's pretty heavy stuff. But I agree. I shouldn't say I agree. I don't know. I've never done LSD, but I can imagine, sure, you'd want to be on something, seeing them, or it can make it more enjoyable. But they're great raw dog. I mean, they really are, So
in this case, you're the raw dog.
Yeah, I'm the raw dog. Usually am. Thanks to vasectomies. Anyway, excuse me. Yes. So Animals as Leaders plays for 45 minutes now or something like that. Then Devin Townsend comes out in pretty short order. He gets about an hour, and I think tell me if this was your read. I felt like a lot of people there didn't know who he was.
I think most people went to this concert for Dream Theater,
sure.
And that's just judging based on the t-shirts that I saw people wearing.
Right, mostly Dream Theater.
Yeah, and also the amount of, applause, cheering, standing up, singing along with the lyrics.
Yeah.
There was still a decent amount of people that really knew Devin Townsend. Mm-hmm. But I think the vast majority of them were there for Dream Theater.
Yeah. Well, I think they might have become converts, because I'll say this, and you and I have seen Dream Theater before.
Yeah.
Perform, and they were phenomenal, and it was only them. They had no opener. But Devin Townsend just stole the show. He's such a performer, he's such an entertainer. It's not just the music is second to none, but he's so good up there, and so funny, and so he engages the audience, and he gives he has banter with the audience, and he talks to them, and it's original stuff. It's not stuff. It's stuff that he can only say there, like he was complaining about, because we're in this
a giant gorilla scrotum is what he called it.
He's like, we're under this flying squirrel or this giant gorilla scrotum.
It just held in the humidity.
Yeah. It's a huge pavilion we were in.
He was having a good time. He was being himself. And I feel like most performers, when they get up on stage, they're just doing a performance of what they think a rock star should be like.
Right.
But Devin was just chilling.
Yeah, because, I'll say this with all respect to the guys at Dream Theater, some of the most talented people on the planet, so I'm not knocking them whatsoever. But, James LaBrie, lead singer for Dream Theater, I feel like this is maybe third, fourth show. I mean, we're catching this tour pretty early on as far as dates.
Well, I think they did a few more than that before they came to Boston.
Okay. Well, I think some of Devin rubbed off on Dream Theater because they must have noticed how the crowd was reacting to him and how much they were enjoying him interacting with the audience. Because James Labrie, which again, we've seen Dream Theater before. I've seen plenty of DVDs of Dream Theater. They usually do not talk to the audience in this way. They just don't. And James Labrie was trying, but like you could tell he's not comfortable with it. He's not used to doing it. And it was just kind of weird. As to where for Devin, like, you know, for him to just in the middle of a song stop and go, holy fucking humidity. I mean, it was completely natural. Again, he's just a tremendous showman. So yeah, I think he brought in a lot of converts because I think he completely took this concert, or took the whole concert. Yeah. Yeah,
the big silly hats really won over the crowd.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Yep, that was cool. The big cowboy hats. that was funny. But Dream Theater was no slouch. They did very well. They played some stuff off of their latest album. They did do Pull Me Under. You know, I mean. Anyway, they were very good. I mean, what did you think of Dream Theater themselves?
Yeah, well, I always think Dream Theater is very good. Obviously, they're very talented.
Right.
They love what they do.
Yeah.
They had amazing animations. I know you thought it was distracting, but it was also, like, pretty impressive that they had designed all these, like, animations to go along with their music, which, when you're not at a live concert, is awesome, because then you can have some sort of a visualizer of like what they intend for the message of the song.
Yeah, I mean, keep going if you want. I'm going to push back a little bit. We'll have some fun with this, but go ahead.
Well, I also thought it was really cool that James Labrie, I don't know if he meant to do it like this, but this is how I interpreted it. So they're obviously Dream Theater, they're known for their long guitar solos.
Oh yeah.
And their drum solos or whatever else, like just the instrumental sections in their music is generally the largest part. And James Labrie's vocals play a part, but not the majority, as in most traditional songwriting.
Sure.
So I feel like he recognizes that, and during this performance specifically, he would go backstage.
He would disappear.
During the long instrumentals. And then, right before he's supposed to come back on, he runs out. So it makes it seem like he's just full of energy. He's like ready to do this. But he's also not taking up the stage and taking attention away from the other super talented guys like John Petrucci.
Yeah. Well, I think Petrucci, I've always called him Petrucci, but anyway, so if I end up saying that.
I don't know how to pronounce his name.
It's all right. But I think John Petrucci has always been the star of the show for Dream Theater. Like, I mean, he's just that good at what he does. And he's kind of the primary writer. Him and Mike Portnoy, who Mike Portnoy, of course, famously is not with the band and hasn't been for a few years. Though on this tour, he did catch them when they were in Pittsburgh, I believe. And he was there in the crowd, and apparently him and Dream Theater, for the first time in many years, a few years, were very chummy. You know, I mean, the drummer they had was great. You know, native Boston boy, too. So that drew, some big cheers.
And Jordan Rudess, of course.
Yeah, Jordan's great. I mean, they've always had a great keyboardist. Before Jordan, they had Derek Sherinian, who's phenomenal. They've had great guys, in making sure those keys get slammed. But, yeah, so, and I agree with you. I didn't really think about it that much, but you're right. That is kudos to James Labrie for getting out of the way. And for knowing what the star of the show is, I mean, he's still very good, and he's a great singer, Yeah,
of course. No one's taking that away from him.
No. And if you don't believe it, I mean, go listen to his solo albums. Not you. I know you have, Ellen. But, I mean, anyone listening, go listen to his solo albums. They're dynamite. But regardless, so I'm going to push back on this, because this is a trend I don't like. And this is a bit of a tech angle, okay? Now, to some degree, I understand why this is a thing now, but at the same time, boy, is it fucking annoying. Like, you have every venue for concerts has a tremendous what they call, like a stadium package, okay, which is lighting that dances, lighting that goes along with the music and whatever, and you set all this up to do that, and it's all very impressive. Now, 30, 40 years ago, you'd have that lighting, you'd probably have some lights behind you as well, and you'd have pyrotechnics, okay, like you'd have, whatever, fire going off and all kinds of shit. So pyrotechnics have slowly been phased out of any live event, not just metal shows, not just concerts. This is true for wrestling, it's true for lots of things. And a big part of that has to do with the fiasco that occurred because of that Great White Show that I want to say was in Connecticut or Rhode Island, I forget now. This was maybe 20 years ago, where they did pyrotechnics in a little bar, and the bar got lit on fire, and people couldn't escape, and I don't know, something like 200 people or however many people died. And that's tragic, and I recognize that tragedy. But so pyrotechnics have been disappearing for a while. But now what's happening is, with the advent of, like LED, LCD technology being so inexpensive and efficient, that now a lot of bands are just putting up LED or LCD screens, or OLED screens or whatever, probably not OLED, but anyway, they're putting up these screens and they're just having animations go and whatever. Honestly, the lighting package is enough. Like that's as entertaining and, as anything could be. And great performers are enough to watch on their own. Dream Theater's like background, and they had this last time too, when we saw them the last time, which was, I don't know, 3-4 years ago maybe. They had a whole background image and everything, but they were doing like all of Metropolis Part 2 or whatever, so I kind of get it. I thought that the video, I thought it was distracting. It was needlessly distracting. And when other bands do it, when other bands bring out the LED shows and whatever, 9 times out of 10, it's just like a little thing that they do. And it's not that it's distracting. It's just like, if you're not going to do the full lighting package, please just don't bother. It just looks kind of cheap. Unless you're Devin Townsend and you know how to make fun of it, right? Like he cracked a joke about how this is the only prop I could bring, and there was just some like little planter or whatever with a. It was
a thing that went woo.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
As he got closer, I forget what those are called. But
yeah,
it's basically like it gets louder as the proximity of your hand gets closer.
Right. So, Dream Theater's visuals, I have 2 problems with it. One, there's lots of motion going on. This is really well done stuff. Some of it's really cool, but a lot of it, I just think it takes away from watching the band play. Like, it's so fucking huge. It's 10x larger than anything the band's doing. And I don't like that. The other thing is, a lot of it, honestly, it felt like they hired somebody on fucking Fiverr to like put together these random images. Like with Metropolis, I didn't mind it because it's a concept album and there's a genuine story being told. And so you can actually play out videos that cover the story, and they do that. But for some of these songs, it was just like, this is just like random images. And that was my feel on it. And you can disagree, and I know you do, and that's fine. I don't know. I don't like this trend of going to the big LCD screens.
While we're complaining, as a person coming from the rave scene and EDM music, I want to know, where are the fucking smoke machines and laser beams?
Well, freaking laser beams on their heads.
I want more lasers, okay? I want the lasers that go woo woo in sync with each other, and they're all crossing beams in different colors.
Lasers used to be a thing in metal shows. I remember seeing.
I think it'd be amazing.
Yeah, I'm with you. See, but that's even lasers would be better, and smoke, because that's a practical effect. Like just a giant screen. You know what?
The lasers, when they shine in your eyes, when they go over your eyelids, that's a real sensation.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
When you get touched by the laser beam, it's like being touched by an angel.
No, you know what? I can actually speak to this. When I saw Janelle Monáe in Paris, France, she had smoke machines and lasers that were flying up your ass, and I think literally. And that was impressive. Like, that was a show. That was something. Okay. And so
I'm glad you got to experience laser beams at least once in your life.
at least once.
That's precious.
I did also, when I was a little kid at Darien Lake, New York, Aerosmith at the time had a laser light show, and that was pretty wild. So I remember that. But anyway, that's why I say metal acts used to do it.
When the laser touches you, it's a special moment.
Yeah, you're supposed to raise your hands and have it go through. I get it, right? So, yeah. But here, it just clicked for me. You know what the real problem is? It's not that I think that Dream Theater's videos are cheap or anything like that. Okay. The real problem is I spend 90% of my life in front of a screen. And part of the reason I go to see live music or I go to an event of any kind, minus going to the movies, is to not have my face in front of a giant screen or in front of a screen again. And I think, and I didn't think about that until we're just talking about it now, but I think that's the genuine problem that I have. It's like, oh, fuck, another screen? Like we have too many. And sadly, I think I want Dream Theater to, like, recognize that.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you want to analyze what was happening on the screen, at least for one of these songs, there was like a giant killer robot.
That was cool. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, it was cool, but also, like, when you see or hear about giant killer robots, I think innately the message is we need to get away from AI and robots because this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And we need to, like, return to a simpler way of life.
Oh, I think they would sing about that. Totally.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, they probably recognized the problem, and they were trying to display that to a large number of people.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I guess I could see that. But even that, well, whatever. I don't mind if it's a huge screen that says, like, KISS across the back, and it's just, like, constantly, like, glowing or flashing, just like, band logos in lights behind them used to do 40, 50 years ago. But the constant motion still bothers me. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I hear you. You could be very right about that.
Look, I'm just trying to defend people that I have feelings for, okay?
Hey, I love them too. I really do. Oh, man. But it was a great show. I mean, like, all of that aside, this was a kick-ass concert. I mean, and like, yeah, we'll go every year if they're really going to do this every year. As far as I know, it's been pretty successful.
Oh, God. I was so excited to see Devin Townsend live for the first time ever. That made it the best concert ever.
Oh, I know. You were in rare form. We'll put it that way. that was something.
And beforehand, I was asking you, like, should I wear this cat shirt or this cat shirt? 'Cause I have one from Snuggles, and then I have one from Empath.
Yeah, I mean, this is what people got to grok. Like, I dare say 25% of your wardrobe is Devin Townsend stuff.
I want to support him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he makes amazing work.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, I have all Whitesnake and KISS shirts and Winger and whatever else.
You're wearing NWO hat and shirt at the moment.
I did not plan that, but it happened. So, yeah. No, I'm totally with you. Yeah. It was that you were amazing. I told you this. I think there was one point where because here's the other thing. Because you asked me, okay, which cat shirt should I wear, right? Which is a Devin Townsend thing. And I said, now everybody who's listening to this knows me, and everything's black, right? It's always triple black. And I try to get you in that as much as possible. But I was like, wear the pink shirt. And I didn't tell you why, but I said, wear the pink one. And when we got there, I think you figured it out pretty quick why you were wearing the pink one. Because everybody at a metal show is wearing black. Everybody's wearing black. And you stood out. I mean, you stood out anyway, but, like, you really stood out. And I swear there's a moment where Devin Townsend, like, looks, and he kind of puts his eyes up to, he's like, whoa, what the fuck is that? And because there is this goddess wearing this bright pink shirt, that being you. And I think there was contact.
Maybe there was. I don't know. All I'm saying is that I love your work and fully support it.
Yeah.
And spread the good word.
Yeah, she loves it. Anyway, so.
Don't make it creepy. No. It's not like I dream about him or anything.
Oh no? Make it creepy. It's not creepy to me. Anyway, excuse me. So, okay. So. Oh, what a life. Yeah, so amazing show. And yes, Devin, we love you and we love your work. I need to listen to Empath more. Like, I mean, that's a bold claim on your part to say greatest album of all time.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. That's something.
I think anything that Devin makes is easily, like, above every other artist in that category, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, I could hear
Just
that.
because he's, like, so in touch with his internal creative side.
Sure. Very sensitive guy. And I say that with respect. Like, that's not a knock. Yeah.
No, I really think the world would be a better place if more people paid attention to what was actually happening for them. And were able to articulate it in some, sensible way.
Yeah, and I mean, his music really explores the grandeur of the universe. It's pretty amazing.
It does, like everything.
Yeah.
Like the creation, existence, consciousness, love.
Yep, it's all there.
All of it.
Yeah. So my favorite band is Kiss, and they sing about
and they sing about how badass they are.
Yeah, and sex.
And sex.
And, well, all right. Anyways. It's fine.
Completely different attitudes. But somehow we unite.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is the thing. You pick out, like, you could list off just about any artist, and they're almost like the Beatles. They're going to say Kiss is one of their influences. Unless it's a modern pop artist, which they all suck, they're not going to claim it. But most people, I mean, like, just toss a name out of the hat.
Oh, like you actually want me to?
Yeah, sure. Like, what? Rob Zombie loves Kiss. Completely inspired by Kiss.
Oh, a modern. Okay, sorry.
I mean, anybody, yeah.
Okay.
If you want to toss one out.
How about Heat?
I guarantee you Heat is totally influenced by Kiss. I mean, you just listen to what their lyrical content. Yeah. Actually, I can say their second singer is directly influenced by Kiss.
Beast in Black?
100%. 100%. I mean, because that's the other thing, too. Like, Kiss really, between Kiss and Alice Cooper, they, as far as putting on, like, a major production on stage, these are the people that did it. They pioneered it all the way. And, bands like Beast in Black, or, they came out of course, Battle Beast. I mean, they're all about putting on that presentation.
Powerwolf?
Oh, yeah. I've even heard the lead guy say such.
Gojira?
So, probably. I'm just saying, you keep tossing these names out. Like, I guarantee every one of them is going to say, oh, yeah. And they'll show you the picture of them as in, like, their teenage years or 20s wearing Kiss shirts. It's crazy.
It's like Elvis.
Yeah, in a very real way. So, anyway, okay. As long as we establish the hierarchy here, we're fine. Speaking of hierarchies.
I don't believe in them.
No, right on. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Unless they occur naturally.
Right. Yeah, hierarchies is a touchy subject because that word comes with a lot of different meanings for a lot of different people. But what do you got?
Sorry, I'm just having flashbacks to work. So I work in a place where we make, like, basically cancer treatments, and we have to comply with global health requirements. So, like, there's just hierarchies and hierarchies all over the place.
Yep.
But then when these people come to visit, they're like global head of sterility or whatever. They're just another person.
Yes.
You can still talk to them.
Oh, yeah.
And they eat chips out of a bag just as messily as everyone else.
Yes. Well, that's the thing. Like, we look up... It's a great point to bring up. Do you have more on that?
Go ahead.
Well, it's a great point that you bring up because, like, even these guys, it's like watching gods up on that stage. You know what I mean? Dream Theater, Devin Townsend, whatever. They really are just people.
Yeah. There's no need to, like, worship them as something, like, that is unachievable because it is.
Yeah, it's achievable. The same air that they have can be applied to a lot of different venues or a lot of different businesses isn't the right word, but I mean, like industries. I don't. Well, I'm just saying, like podcasting. I mean, one of my main tricks for bringing a lot of energy to a show. I mean, it's not like an energy I necessarily bring to one of our episodes here, But over the years, I always imagined that, I'm in the studio, I know, and I'm looking at a wall, but I'm imagining 100,000 people in front of me. And I'm on stage, and I just let it rip. And that's where, everybody's like, where do you get all that energy from? How do you keep that up and all that stuff? Well, you got to imagine you're in the right place. And that's the same energy that rock stars feed off of.
Or the Ori.
Hallowed are the Ori.
We've been watching Stargate, and I feel like this is very similar because the Ori draw their power from their worshippers.
Yes.
And I feel like that's the same for anybody who's performing, is they draw their energy, their power, from the people who subconsciously submit to them.
Yeah. I mean, I like to think of more as more of a sharing energy.
Yeah, well, you're not vampiric, Cliff.
No, I'm not the Ori. But boy, that's a phrase. I'm glad you said that here, because I'm going to be saying that a lot.
What phrase?
Hallowed are the Ori.
Oh, well, that essentially stands for blind worship.
Yeah.
Faith and fear.
Yeah, I mean, basically, anytime I hear, religious nonsense, or an argument that's just religious nonsense from somebody, I'm just going to respond with, hallowed are the Ori. It's perfect. And I know, or I don't know, I'd love to go to, a convention and talk to, Damian Kindler and a lot of these other writers and ask them, so you really were ripping on Christianity, weren't you? This is, you even have the fucking virgin birth. Granted, it's a woman that comes out instead of a man, but you're really ripping on Christianity, right? You're ripping on Jesus Christ and kind of Catholicism and all this, and especially with the Roman design of Ori soldiers and everything. And I'd love to get that confirmation, but I firmly believe that that's what they're doing.
Well, it's like the Crusades. They've been calling it that anyway.
Right.
They basically just show up to a planet and, do you submit to the practices and the teachings of the Ori? Yeah. And if not, then they burn the whole place down. Yeah,
but it's amazing because it's a fantastic, it's an incredible allegory. Mm-hmm. It works so well for showing, and for it's great commentary, and you don't get that often in science fiction. You'll get direct hits, you could think of authors, Damian Knight, Isaac Asimov, even a bunch of them that will directly attack, say, Christianity or rip on Christianity. But Stargate was so subtle with it, and they did it so well. Man, that show's amazing.
Yeah, what could be more terrifying than egomaniacal bad guys that basically just want to be worshipped as gods?
Yeah.
Well, a religion that forces you to blindly follow or die.
Mm-hmm. Oh, dynamite. Hallowed are the Ori. Anyway.
But that is another non sequitur, because we were talking about music.
Yeah, we were talking about music. So that's completely off the wall. But anyway, these people, they're just people. And I think a lot of folks really forget that, and that you really could just talk to these people. And if you ever do want to actually talk to them, just talk to them like they're a normal human being, and, if you're actually wanting to engage them, that's the way to do it, and I can say this from having, I've had friends that are celebrities. I've hung around celebrities at science fiction conventions years ago and everything. And that's what I did, was just talk to them like they're normal people. Even though, you'd have others who would say, oh no, when you're a rock star, you're on another level. You're not even human anymore and blah, blah, blah. No. So anyway, speaking of not being human, this is a segue. Do you want to get into some of the stories we had planned?
And this is a response. Yes, I would like to.
Let's do it.
Let's talk about these stories.
Yeah, I mean, it's Sovryn Tech X. We just hang out, we talk shit, and we talk it up.
And we make fun of each other.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, what is this? Put the microphone up to the cactus and here it comes.
Yeah. So,
all right, let's do this.
Yeah, let's see what happens when we do it. But anyway, so this got shared in the Patreon-only Discord for Sovryn Tech, or Sovryn Technica. And it was tongue-in-cheek shared, but I actually want to talk about it.
What?
Because...
What kind of person doesn't have empathy for plants?
Well, vegans.
No, that's not true. We love plants. That's why I grow them.
That's why you eat them?
Look, we can talk about the... I know we have this conversation.
Yeah.
But no, I'm going to say straight up right now, I care about plants just as much as I care about people.
All right, well, let's read this. So we'll find out about that. So this is coming from, originally it was published in Nature, but that's behind a paywall because the internet is crashing, and I don't mean our internet is, I mean the big bad internet is dying and crashing, and so everybody's charging for everything.
Thanks, ChatGPT.
Yeah, and plenty of else. But I do have a full copy of the story here. I'll put the link in the show notes. And the headline is "Stressed Plants, quote, cry," end quote. And some animals can probably hear them. And this is from this year in 2023.
What?
So, it says, plants do not suffer in silence. Instead, when thirsty or stressed, plants make, quote unquote, airborne sounds, according to a study published today in Cell. Plants that need water or have recently had their stems cut produce up to roughly 35 sounds per hour, the authors found. But well-hydrated and uncut plants are much quieter, making only about 1 sound per hour. So this is kind of the basis of where they're saying it, quote-unquote, cries.
So I want to know, what are these airborne sounds? Because I know that plants release chemicals and hormones into the air, so you can... They communicate in that chemical way, which for us would be a smell or a taste or something like that. I don't know if that's what they're talking about or if it's literally vibration of the air molecule. So let's keep reading and find out.
Here we go. The reason you have probably never heard a thirsty plant make noise is that the sounds are ultrasonic, about 20 to 100 kilohertz. That means they are so high-pitched that very few humans could hear them. Some animals, however, probably can. Bats, mice, and moths could potentially live in a world filled with the sounds of plants. And previous work by the same team has found that plants respond to sounds made by animals too.
That's amazing, because those animals actually live on plants.
Right. Yes. Right. All herbivores.
Not that they, eat plants. I mean, bats don't eat plants.
Right.
But I mean, they live inside of trees or,
yes,
on the side of them. You know, they use them for camouflage, especially moths.
Right. Exactly. So the interesting thing here, I mean, I can think of what they call silent mouse or mice repellent, which is a thing that you plug into a box that you plug into a wall that plays in those ultrasonic frequencies. That's supposed to scare the mice off. Now, when I was a younger person, a teenager in New York, we had a tremendous mouse problem for some fucking reason. And it's not like we had cheese laying around everywhere.
But you didn't have cats, did you?
No, did not have cats, which of course would have solved it. But we did decide, all right, let's put out these ultrasonic, mice things, because my grandmother never wanted to see a mouse in a trap and, and all of this stuff. Okay, so we use these ultrasonic mouse repellers.
Go, Grandma.
Yeah, well, the thing is, they didn't work.
Oh, yeah.
And this kind of speaks, I think, to that. Mice are hearing this shit all the time. What did that ultrasonic repellent matter in comparison to the sounds of plants?
I think it's supposed to be unpleasant. And the thing with things that are unpleasant is that they are not intolerable. So this is something that I've learned from both ultrasonic repellents and all natural repellents to plants and insects, is that it doesn't matter if it's unpleasant. If they're hungry enough, they'll deal with it. It's like if somebody was just blasting country music at 120 decibels. If you were hungry, you'd still walk up to that table and take food.
Yeah, that's true. Whenever I'm down south, I just deal with it. When I go to a restaurant, I'm like, this music is fucking atrocious, but okay, I'm hungry and I'll eat.
Yeehaw.
Yeah. So, okay, got it. Yeah. Anyway. So, all right. Let's keep going, but that's the range in which they're making these sounds. So to eavesdrop on plants, Lilich Hadaneh at Tel Aviv University in Israel and her colleagues placed tobacco and tomato plants in small boxes kitted out with microphones. The microphones picked up any noises made by the plants, even if the researchers couldn't hear them. The noises were particularly obvious for plants that were stressed by a lack of water or recent cutting. If the sounds are pitched down and sped up, quote, "It is a bit like popcorn, very short clicks. It is not singing," Haddonay says. So I guess that's the idea why it doesn't sound like, it's not a pleasant noise, saying that it's not singing. It sounds unpleasant. Plants do not have vocal cords or lungs. Haddonay says the current theory for how plants make noises centers on their xylem, the tubes that transport water and nutrients from the roots to their stems and leaves. Water in the xylem is held together by surface tension, just like water sucked through a drinking straw. When an air bubble forms or breaks in the xylem, it might make a little popping noise. Bubble formation is more likely during drought stress. But the exact mechanism requires further study, Haddonay says.
That's fascinating.
Right. So I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit to subheader here, chattering grasses. Previously, Haddonay's team has also studied whether plants can hear sounds and found that beach evening primroses? Is that, no, just, maybe they spelled it wrong. Release sweeter nectar when exposed to the sound of a flying bee. So are plant noises an important feature of ecosystems, influencing the behavior of plants and animals alike? The evidence isn't yet clear, according to Graham Pike, a retired biologist at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia, who specializes in environmental science. He's skeptical that animals listen to the moans of stressed plants. Quote, "It is unlikely that these animals are really able to hear the sound at such distances," end quote, he says. He thinks the sounds would be too faint. Further research should shed more light on the matter, but Pike says he's perfectly willing to accept that plants squeal, quote unquote, when stressed. So, now, this was, again, shared in jest, and I know the person was just cracking a joke and isn't, very serious about it.
What was the joke?
The joke is, basically, your move, vegans, meaning that, like, if you don't eat animals because you care about the animals, well, if the plants are crying, you can't eat plants either. Right, and that's kind of the. That's
so we're supposed to just live on sunlight?
We're supposed to be breatharians. So no,
you got me.
That's the implied joke.
Checkmate.
Well, but here's the thing: we've had this conversation before, you and I, and this is kind of what leads me to this. Now, I think there's a big difference between. So they're saying that the xylem, like, when that gets cut, that it's almost like opening a can, it sounds like to me, where when you open a can and the pressure, makes a sound. That's not like you're actually hurting. I mean, it's a can for one, but it's not like you're actually hurting anything. It's just that the action creates a sound.
So I think you might not be interpreting this.
That's fine.
So
that's why I brought a scientist here.
The story said, yes. So I am a scientist.
You are a scientist,
a legit scientist.
Yes.
And I study plants a lot, and I love plants, and I raise them, and I have grown them for many years.
You have an entire lab.
Yeah.
Like, quite literally, that you have a lab where you engage in plant science. So you are as legit as it comes. Please continue.
Thank you. I love to learn about plants and read about them.
Yes.
Anyway, so the xylem and phloem of plants are, like the story says, related, or like similar in function and form to the human blood system.
Yeah, they're like veins.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And in human blood, or like in human lives, we can sometimes get bubbles in our blood.
Yeah.
Usually exemplified by the bends. So like you go into a highly pressured system, like underwater. If you come up too quickly, the gases that are dissolved in your bloodstream will expand into bubbles. And then, if they rapidly collapse, that's, they release an ultrasonic wave or something like that. Right. It can be very dangerous for you to have any sort of bubbles in your bloodstream. Mostly because, like, when it passes through your heart, it's dangerous. But that's not necessarily the case for plants. So they have xylem and phloem that function based on fluid mechanics, which, because of the very tiny size of their xylem and phloem, they don't require the pumping action that we have in our bodies. It sounds like these sounds are generated in the plants when they're very thirsty, when they don't have a lot of water, or like when they've been damaged. Which, when a plant is damaged, it does have a response to that is both hormonal and apparently also audible, which this is news to me. But I know from previous experience, and we've actually talked about stories related to this on the show before too, that like plants do have a response, like a sort of, we call it pain response. We don't know what the plant is actually experiencing, but obviously it is on some level aware that it has been damaged and it's reacting to that. So whatever this sound is, it might be like the plant moving resources from one area to another one in order to repair the damage that's been done.
Right.
But that's just my understanding of what they're explaining here. Again, they don't know the mechanism by which the sound is generated. I mean, it could be bubbles forming. It could be something completely different.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And so, but my point, and my point is, it's not like it's a language. It's not like it's, sound waves coming out of their larynx, in a cohesive way that is sending. I mean, I guess
it is a language, though. It's a form of communication. Not that there's an intention to communicate.
Right.
But the fact that the plant is damaged, the plant is sad, it makes this noise in response to that.
Right.
It's stimulus and response.
Yeah. No, I get that. And I get that it's a sound, like the guy from Australia was saying, it's a sound that probably isn't pleasant, to animals either. So, yeah, it's stimulus and response, but it's that. It's stimulus and response. It's not, what's the word I'm looking for?
It's not, the intention is, there's no intention of the plant to call out to an animal.
Right, it's not intentional. That's intentional is the word I'm looking for.
And if an animal did hear that sound, there's no guarantee that it would know what that means.
Right, exactly. I mean, now the idea that plants can hear, that's been studied for over 30 years. I mean,
longer than that. Like, I mean, it was a huge thing in the 70s, I feel like.
Right. So, I mean, for example, there was experiments where, I mean, I know I ripped on country earlier, but I don't necessarily, I think this guy's bigger than country music. But like they played John Denver, for the plants, and the plants would they reacted favorably compared to other kinds of music. Of course, there's the work of, Mitsuru Amato in Japan about, playing different types of music or writing messages, and water, like frozen water, ends up taking different shapes depending upon what you're playing. Now, I mean, the idea of quote-unquote hearing, plants don't have ears as we understand it, but
sound is vibration.
Exactly.
And
yes.
Plants can perceive vibrations.
Right. And can that have some kind of physical effect upon the plant? Of course it can. Just like I think it can have the same effect on a human being, So... And
also, a lot of what we're saying is still speculation.
Yes.
I think it's a huge mistake to assume that we know the level of intelligence that plants have in all of their senses. We don't.
Right.
That is a fact. We are still learning to this day how similar plant root systems are to human brain cells.
Right.
So we can't say for a fact, like, plants don't understand, they don't have intentions.
Yeah.
How do we know?
Well, see, now this is where I wanted to go with this. This is the conversation I wanted to have. And we've had this, you and I, when we've been going on our travels, or even over breakfast or dinner, in that, what if plants are alive? What if they are...
They are alive.
Well, what if they are sapient? What if they are conscious? What if they are aware? What if they're self-aware? And then, like, what do you do when... I know the listener was cracking a joke, but in all seriousness, if you don't want to take life, what do you do at that point? If we found out... Go ahead.
You follow the golden rule of the forest, which is, I think, don't take more than 30% of whatever bounty you find. And especially with plants that grow fruits, the intention of that fruit is to be eaten. That is why the plant grows the fruit.
Well, you see, now you bring that up, and that's a great point. And this gets really interesting. For me, with me, I mean, you're a scientist, I'm a historian, Doctor of Divinity, all that jazz, right? Okay. So for me, my mind goes to, okay, in historical texts about the origins of humanity, like, okay, how did humans used to eat, before we had McDonald's? Now, granted, that's actually a broad swath of time, thankfully. Otherwise, if we'd been eating McDonald's for 1,000 years, I don't think we'd be here anymore. But like it just being in existence is enough of a death knell for the human species overall, for varying reasons, from cultural, societal to health alone. Anyway, so I go back to and I'm thinking like Garden of Eden. Now, I'm not saying I think that the Garden of Eden is a literal story, okay? But when you do read it literally, human beings weren't vegetarians. They didn't eat meat. That seems to be pretty clear. What they were fruitarians. They only ate fruit at the time. Now, that's a fascinating thing because, this description of the garden in the east of Eden is that it's paradise, right? Man, humanity doesn't have to work, or at least the few humans that were there, or the two, anyway, that were in the actual garden at the east of Eden. And the only thing they eat, again, is fruit. But they're living in perfect harmony with nature. There's no death. The first death is when God decides to clothe Adam and Eve, by killing a lamb.
And the interesting thing about that is that fruit is a dubious term, right? So
Sure.
Most people think of fruit as like apples and bananas.
Right.
But actually, fruit is like whatever fruiting body comes off of the plant. So that includes vegetables, a lot of vegetables. That includes a lot of nuts that grow on trees. It's not just like a fruit, like a pear.
Right. Well, and spot on. But that's the interesting thing that you kind of brought up is that, okay, let's say plants are conscious. All right. So in a paradisical state, theoretically, again, I'm saying theoretically, I don't take it literally. Okay. Humanity seems, it's amazing to me that humanity only eats food that is literally designed, like not designed. If you're taking it literally, it is God's design.
Evolutionarily designed.
Yeah, but it's evolutionarily designed to be eaten. That is its life process, is to be eaten. The life process of a rabbit is not to be eaten. Life process of a deer or a cow or whatever is not to be eaten. The life process of a fruit is to be eaten. That's how it spreads, right? It
spreads through poop.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is how it has evolved to continue to exist and spread as a species itself, right? These trees and fruits and everything. So I was just, when I was reading this article and when we were talking about it recently, like that thought crossed my mind, and I'm like, that's fucking amazing. This idea that, because even if plants, because we had the debate, what do you do, if you find out that plants are sapient or that they're conscious, that like they have a network intelligence or something like that. The thing you do if you're trying to promoting life is done through allowing them to propagate, which is done by you eating it. Like that's how they propagate, and something about that just really struck me in the sense that, again, design is really the wrong word, but this is just how it's meant to be. So you're not, even if they were conscious, you're not doing anything wrong. You're assisting their life process.
And here's the other fascinating thing about plants is that the majority of them, when you take just a couple leaves off, ones that are not like the biggest, most energy intensive ones.
Right.
You just take the ones that are like lowest, that are the closest to dying maybe, or like you just take a few off at a time, like not enough to really tax the plant, but like just enough so that you can have some of it. Usually the plant responds by reproducing even more.
Right.
Like the kale plants that I have in the backyard. I'll take a couple off of the lowest rungs of the kale plant, and it just keeps growing taller.
Yeah.
Or like the basil plants that I grow outside. Like you really have to trim those.
Right.
There's a lot of plants actually, like you just take a few leaves and it just creates more of an impetus for growth.
Yeah, exactly. So, and this is why it's important, in my opinion, to think about these things kind of in the Buckminster Fuller fashion of Spaceship Earth, right? Of that Earth is is a singular superorganism. Really, I go so far, and I've talked about this on Into the Void episodes, I've talked about it in the Sovryn Technica newsletter, the entire universe is a superorganism. And we're a part of that. And we have a process in that. And, but just take it down to the Earth level, as it were. And this is part of, us eating fruits and vegetables is part of that process. It's part of having this healthy superorganism that is the Earth overall, because that's how you get, and I mean, then, what do trees and plants and everything, they create the air that we breathe and, and everything else. But
yeah, and of course, in an ideal world, we would be using healthy farming practices, not like,
yes, regenerative
massive
farming practices.
Yeah, exactly. Not like massive monocrop, like all the corn in the Midwest,
Right.
like that's not natural. Plants are meant to be grown together, like multiple different species usually grow synergistically together. And the way that farming is done today is not how it's intended.
Yeah.
But, there are organic ways to do it. There are very, I forget what the word is, but anyway, there's ways to do it where the plants are happier together than they are separated.
Sure. Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. So, even if, say, at the end of this research somehow you found out that, holy shit, plants are alive, right? I mean, like, this is something like the work of Dr. Paul Stamets.
You mean they're sentient?
That they're sentient, yes. That they're self-aware. I usually use the word sapient, but, whatever, self-aware. You look at, like, the work of Dr. Paul Stamets, where his theory that, mycelia are actually interconnected everywhere, and it's like one big neural system, I mean, he's very much making an argument that it might even be intelligent. It's almost like Avatar, where... Oh, yeah, Way of Water, yep.
Yeah, so it's like Avatar in the sense that the whole planet is interconnected, and mycelium are the bridge between plants. So, like, plants have root systems that are just as large underground as they are above ground.
Right.
And mycelium often act as like conveyors of information between different plant populations.
Yeah.
And that can, theoretically, if we were to like go out on a limb here, pardon the pun, could lead to this idea of a group of trees on one side of the road talking to a group of trees on the other side of the road. And they're communicating about what resources they have and what resources they need and what happened over here. Like, are they being eaten too much by an invasive moth species? Well, then this other population of trees better start producing some sort of secondary metabolite that repels these moths.
Right.
Otherwise, they're going to die too.
Right.
So plants, they talk to each other. They help each other out.
Sure.
And it's across distances.
Yeah. Well, and we increase, humans, when we eat vegetables, fruits and vegetables, we increase that network. Is that fair? To say that, like, I mean, new trees or whatever, new seeds come out of our ass and...
Well, when we foster the growth of plant populations, yes, we do help to increase. But the very act of eating plants, you are encouraging new ones to grow.
Yeah, yeah. So again, I think you're increasing the network as to where, you kill a pig, that does nothing for nothing. I mean, that, unless somebody's going to make arguments around population control, but that's a whole other subject, and it's a losing argument anyway.
And even
that's a problem of civilization, not a problem of, a natural state.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
And even if you look at traditional farming practices where you like dig up the whole potato plant and you eat the potatoes, like that's killing the entire plant. But still, farmers have to save some amount of their potatoes so that they can plant them the next year. So even if they do kill all of those potato plants, they are still propagating them for the future.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting you bring up Avatar 2. Because, Something that and folks, if if people want to, I don't know, I'll put timestamps or something because people get bugged out whenever we talk about vegetarianism or veganism, it seems, even though it's really what we've been doing this whole time. But really, I'm trying to talk about, okay, are plants conscious or not? What does that mean? I love these movies. Love the Avatar films. Right behind me, there's a Funko Pop of...
I love them too.
Yeah.
They're so precious.
Yeah, they are. And I mean, I books over there on Avatar. Fuck, I have a Citizen watch that's Avatar. I absolutely love these movies. Probably the greatest modern invention of a franchise that we'll ever get. Modern, I say. Not count, this is long, decades after Star Trek, Star Wars, and everything else came to be. And at the same time, I can recognize, I love a lot of the messages that these movies get out. But at the same time, do they really have to, hunt the animals on there? You got an entire alien world. Couldn't you come up with... I know it's meant to be somewhat of an allegory for Earth, but at the same time, did you have to go that distance,
Yeah, I think they were trying to mimic what they saw as native practices.
Sure, First Nations practices.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And a lot of the Native Americans in North America, they hunt animals.
Yeah, right.
I think the reason for that, historically, maybe there's many different reasons. I mean, they use every part of the animal for some different function or another, whether it's a sewing needle and thread or a water bottle or, even skin for their teepees.
Yeah.
They needed to use those animals in that way. But also, they live in a place where there's winter and they have to deal with snow. And, as hairless apes, we kind of need hair from other creatures.
Yeah, well...
So, if they were to live in a tropical area, I feel like that necessity would go away.
Yeah, but they pretty much did.
The aquatic...
well...
I don't want to call them a sect. No. Even, in the second movie, The Way of Water.
Yeah. We'll say the forest tribe, the water tribe, just to keep it simple. The forest tribe, they didn't really live in the snow. I think we're eventually going to run into ones that do. That there are tribes that do that. They lived a pretty naked life. They're never really wearing clothing. Same with the water tribe. But here's... So I hear that, that we got to cover up. We're based upon where we live. We got to have something on, And I think an argument could be made that Avatar makes the case that when a creature dies, whether it's... one of the Na'vi, right? One of the blue people, one of the Na'vi, or if it's, one of the creatures, that they end up joining back with the planet. They always kind of show that, and they have the direct connection that can literally connect to the plants and the animals, or that can connect to home tree and all this stuff, right?
Yeah, and I feel like that was another attempt on Hollywood's part to make that Native American connection with their surrounding environment as more of a physical metaphor.
Yeah. I guess the thing for me, here's the shame, because what these movies could have done, of course they would have never been made into movies because there's no action if they do this. What do they do? Okay, so I think the reason that hunting was a part of it is you had to have a reason why the Na'vi would have bows and arrows. Okay? Or why they'd have any kind of weapons. It's because they're hunters.
Yeah.
There's some in the first movie, there wasn't this idea that there was interwarring between tribes. You get hints of it in Avatar 2. In Avatar 3, it's supposed to be kind of a big deal because there's a fire tribe that's going to be there that is not nice guys. But whatever, that's besides the point. But what do they do to stop the humans? They go to war. And it's man, this would have been such a great opportunity to say, no, here, let us explain to you why we live the way that we live, and the joys of living this way. And you could have had such great, I hate the word philosophy, but fine, great philosophical messages in there. And it's just, no, we got to have an action movie, so have them use bows and arrows against, metal armored, helicopters
Yeah,
and whatever
well, what
else.
kind of movie would it be if they were pacifists? If, like, instead of taking revenge on the humans for killing their loved ones, they said, I am not going to lash out. I'm going to deal with my anger and sadness on my own, and in the healing environment of my community, and we're going to seek some sort of justice from these people peacefully. Like, that would not make a great Hollywood movie.
No, it wouldn't make a great Hollywood movie. You're completely right. That's the problem. But it was such a missed opportunity for James Cameron, who can basically make whatever movie he wants, and Hollywood will fund it. And if Hollywood won't fund it, he'll put his own money down, because he's a real artist. It's just a shame that they didn't go there, and they could have. He's one of the few people that could have. I know we're going to be seeing Oppenheimer here soon in IMAX.
Talk about war movies.
Yeah, well, but I wonder what's I mean, I know the review's are already in, and the movie's amazing as far as I understand it. I can't wait to, you, myself, and Rob are going to go see it. We'll get a review in here somewhere. But I'm curious what message Christopher Nolan wants to bring, with this movie.
Well, probably the same message that a lot of those scientists wanted to spread at the time when they were working on this, was that, like, we're only doing this under duress. I mean, maybe at the time some of the scientists working in the Manhattan Project felt like, we have to do this in order to beat the Nazis. But then later on, they were like, no, actually, I was tricked into this, and I wish we had never done it, because nobody deserves that amount of power.
Right.
Destructive power.
You raised the great point. They were tricked into it. The Manhattan Project is called the Manhattan Project because what they did is they had a bunch of different separate organizations working on different aspects of the project that did not know the sum of its parts. They didn't know everything, what it meant when it all came together. So most scientists, you're completely right, were duped, because if they did know, I think you're right. I think they would have said, fuck you, we're not building that. And someone could have came out with some honesty and said, no, the Nazis aren't that far ahead. They're not designing this. They're not going to get this thing right. So yeah, that's why I'm kind of, because Christopher Nolan's another one of these guys who he can make whatever movie he wants, and it gets funded and it gets released. Okay. And so I'm curious if he's going to take the opportunity. I don't know. We'll see. And it's amazing because they're also very polar opposites as far as films. Avatar 2 is completely CGI, minus Spider, maybe some of the human actors. As to where Oppenheimer, famously now, there is zero CGI in the film, which is going to be interesting to see on its own. Yeah, it's just a shame, because you could have gotten way more powerful messages out there than okay, everybody hop on your beasts and, start attacking the humans with our bows and arrows and crap. And anyway, it's a missed opportunity. That's all I got.
But I feel like you're making a complaint about the state of Hollywood, and that's kind of like a pointless thing to complain about at this point. Because
pointless.
We can't change that.
No. Yeah. And
all we can do is our best.
Yeah. No, it's fine. And Hollywood's eating itself, so who gives a shit at the end of the day?
But it's great to bounce these ideas off of Hollywood.
Yes. Yeah. It's nice to have that cultural meme, which movies are, and that we can, kind of explore. And but what could you have really done, in this situation? So, anyway, yeah. Yeah, I wish they were vegans. Okay, so...
Yeah, actually, I wish there were more stories told about groups of people that live naturally as vegans and, like, have no freaking problem with it.
Right. And that go for peaceful solutions,
or even vegetarians.
Yeah, vegetarians, right. I mean, I've even famously said, I'm not going to go the distance of veganism, on the dietary, sure. The broader aspects of everything, like I'm not 100% there.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, like, we're never going to eat honey, because
right, it's
in a lot of things. Just like milk and eggs are. Not that we choose to eat those of our own accord. Like, we'll never buy those in the grocery store. But if it's like something that's in our salad dressing or something that's in like a piece of cake that we eat. Okay. You know, like it's a small enough amount that you can tolerate it.
Yeah.
Although I, like, on a philosophical level, definitely do agree with the vegan arguments against eating animal products as they are harvested today, based off of the fact that most animals are, you know, held under duress in horrible conditions.
Yes.
So that's where I'm coming from on that. But
yeah,
anyway,
100%.
Just I want to reiterate what I said earlier. Like, I care about plants a lot.
Yes.
And I raise them in what I think are good, healthy environments, and I am upset when I see them suffering, and yet I can still eat them in very small amounts, knowing that what I am doing is not killing the plant. It might be hurting it a little, just like, you know, it hurts to, like, I don't know, have your hair pulled out or something.
Right.
But it grows back.
Yes.
And for plants, generally, they grow back bigger and stronger if they're in the right environment.
Yeah. No, you're yeah, absolutely.
But plants are what give us life.
Yes.
Not just me and you, but literally everyone on this planet.
Yes.
Primary producers are the base of the food chain.
Right.
And we, like, no creatures can live without them unless they are a primary producer.
Yeah, 100%.
Which, like, if we could just photosynthesize, that would be great.
Yeah, hey, great.
I would
If we can be like
that.
Superman, awesome. Yeah, I'm there. You know.
Let's figure that out.
Yeah. Or somehow we, you know, figure out food replicators, but that's about as unlikely as any other, or as many other aspects of science fiction. So, okay. Speaking of something that is not science fiction and caring about the environment, I think a lot of people like to run to, and this speaks to, frankly, what I think is a much larger problem. Are we good to go a little bit longer?
Yes.
I want to get this out here. And this is...
Let's do it.
Yeah, and this is interesting because the very first episode that you, Ellen, were on of Sovryn Tech, years and years ago, okay, when we were just becoming friends, years and years ago, we talked about, you came in and you basically thrashed the entire EV industry, that being electric vehicles.
I feel like we need to have the audio version of the thought bubble popping up, the magic sound going back in time.
Or I'll put the dream harp up that I always use.
Yes.
Yeah. But, I mean, this is years ago.
Yeah, the episode was called Ellen Killed the Electric Car.
That's right. That's right. And we went through you particularly, and I thought you did a dynamite job. Honestly, you got a lot of heat for it on social media at the time. And at the time I was still on social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter and everything else. Because, well, again, I thought your arguments were spot on, saying, no, the EV is a terrible idea. It's really only there to pad out the bottom of spreadsheets, you know, for like carbon emission offsets and all this other stuff. And
yeah, basically I was just saying that electric vehicles cause pollution in different ways than traditional vehicles do.
Right.
Like, the electricity is created the majority of the time at coal-powered plants, so you're not escaping the use of fossil fuels. You still have to get that electricity from somewhere.
Right.
And then the batteries themselves are harvested in harsh conditions using, like, harsh chemicals, you know, acids and bases, and they often pollute the waterways around it, pollute the earth, and cause harm to people. And they're rare earth minerals, and they're things that are expensive and heavy.
Yes.
And it's more energy intensive to, like, mine them and turn them into batteries. And then you can't recycle the batteries afterwards. At least most people don't. There's some countries where they're forced to. But the other thing is, this is just like any other industry. Like in the meat industry, for example, meat is their prime moneymaker. But a lot of big meat corporations also produce plant-based alternatives, because either way the market swings, they still win.
Right.
It's the same with the auto industry. They want to introduce electric vehicles into people's lives, making it seem like a healthier alternative for the environment.
Right.
But in reality, it's not. It's just a different form of pollution. But either way, whether you buy traditional vehicles or electric vehicles, they still make money.
Yeah, exactly. Now, so, to summarize some of that, the mining and production of batteries is an environmental disaster. I don't think, or I'm adding the emphasis on that, but I don't think that's unfair to say. I'm not saying that going for crude oil is that much better, but one of the differences, and this speaks to kind of my defense of what we call ICE, which is internal combustion engine. Okay, one of my defenses of the combustion engine is that its technology has been around for like 100 years, and
well, electric vehicles have been too.
You're right, and they got killed. You killed the electric car a few years ago, but Chrysler and a bunch of other companies killed the electric car back in the 30s, and because it was an idea that would have worked at the time. Anyway, the internal combustion engine has been perfected, like to the highest amount of efficiency possible, and I consider it almost a tragedy. Now you've perfected this to where it's as efficient as it could possibly be, environmentally friendly as it can possibly be, and now you kill it. And is that because there's no more innovation in that space? Is that part of why suddenly you're also, because there's never just one reason, is that also part of why you're going into the electric car?
Maybe. I mean, they do have to continue growing.
Right. And you got to pay your engineers, and you've got to do, right, you have to keep growing as a business.
But I think everybody realizes on some level, especially these vehicle companies, they have to know on some level that, like, our stores of oil are finite, and with the population growing as it is, the projections for fossil fuel production meeting the requirements that people have for their traveling, like, that's not going to last forever. A few decades, maybe.
Yeah, so, the concept of peak oil has been, that's been around for a while, and there have been solutions that have come along, like shale oil, that process ended up becoming a thing, and really staved off, like, gas getting to astronomical prices much earlier than they already did, or kept them from happening earlier than they did.
Yeah, but people still have legitimate concerns about fracking.
Totally, 100%. Yeah, I'm with you on that. So here's where we're going with this. We've already brought up the reasons of why this is a bad idea. Why EVs are not really a solution. Part of that is implementation, production, the fact, like you said, these companies really don't care, and they don't. And again, if you're relying upon the electrical grid, you haven't stopped the concerns around fossil fuels, like you said, because the electrical grid runs on what? And we're not going nuclear. So
I wish people would.
Me too.
I think it's a great source of energy.
Right. So, now what we're finding out, because EVs are becoming popular and so many of them are getting on the road now, we're finding out that there's this whole other type of pollution that isn't unique to EVs, but it is far worse due to EVs because of the battery technology, like you mentioned, makes the car incredibly heavy. Or even the trucks that are coming out. And this, I didn't even get into the concern around EVs in that you have this proprietary technology with, the battery and everything that works with that you can't even get it repaired, as to where an internal combustion engine, it's all a physical process. Anybody can mimic that and fucking smelt their own engines, like you can replace that, as to where a lot of the technologies in EVs, it's not user replaceable, and it's not even something that a third party aftermarket, could do.
Oh, and anybody who's worked on cars or even like any piece of equipment that is relatively complicated knows electrical problems are some of the most difficult problems to diagnose and to fix.
Yeah. Well, electricity should have as little a role in cars as possible, in my opinion, and also computers don't belong in cars, but that's old style Sovryn Tech stuff. That's still true, but whatever. I've made those arguments a million times. So what we're finding out now, though, is one of the perhaps even more concerning pollution problems is microplastics, particulates from the tires, from rubber.
Are you going to read the story about this?
I might link to it. So I have it here. It's from The Atlantic that came out recently. I had actually heard about this a couple months ago on Twit. I was listening to This Week in Tech, and they had, for some reason, they had like every guest host that was on was from like a car media outlet, a podcast, or like a journalistic outlet of some kind. And they had talked about it at the end of the episode, and I go, my ears perked up. I'm like, holy shit! Like, what's that about? I had no idea that this is a thing, but this is a thing. The title of the Atlantic story is "EVs are sending toxic tire particles into the water, soil, and air." And this is their point, that these EVs, because they're heavier, and because car companies designed them to go from 0 to 60 in no time whatsoever, so they're being driven faster and harder, and they're heavier, so they're producing far more of these particulates that end up poisoning everything around them, especially by highways. And now there's even research saying if you live by a highway, your potential for your cancer risk goes up significantly because of this. That this is a problem. Now, some tire companies, Bridgestone, others, are trying to reformulate the rubber to negate this. But this is a very real problem.
Yeah, so if you think about car tires as they are now, they're designed for your average vehicle that weighs, 2,000 pounds. Like my Mazda probably weighs somewhere around there, maybe less. But they are soft-ish rubber. They're made for cars of a specific size, and as your car gets larger, so do your tires. And maybe the material of Construction can change as well, depending on the weight of your vehicle. So a lot of electric vehicles are the size of normal sedans, but they're twice the weight, 3 times the weight.
Yes.
And not to mention...
Because of the battery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because of the batteries. And then also, because of the nature of electricity and the power delivery that comes from that, there's immediately 100% acceleration available to you if you were to step on the gas pedal. Going from 0 to 60, they were saying that these could compete in drag races against some of the world's fastest vehicles.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's the nature of electrical power delivery. It's instantaneous. It's immediate and full. And that is very hard on these tires. And the tires get shredded. And so, like, when it comes to microplastics, there's a variety of different sizes. Obviously, like, if a tire blows, you can see the chunks. But then, like, as you're just going faster or driving harder or like the tires are really hot or whatever, more particulates are flying off, and they're in like the nanometer size range. And of course, people know that living next to highways, you breathe in all sorts of dust that's thrown up from the roadways, but nobody was really aware of this tire problem until like this research started coming out about EV tires, because like we need tires that are stronger to withstand that amount of weight. The ones that they're using currently, they're just not designed to handle that much.
Right.
And that's why this is such an issue. I think they said that one EV is spitting out the equivalent of like 3 vehicles worth of tire pollution.
Yeah.
And the tire lifespan is reduced to like 25% of what it should be.
It's by thousands, tens of thousands of miles, the difference. And actually now that, again, EVs have been in the market for a while, now EV owners are complaining, saying, wait, why do I have to change my tires every year or 2? Like, usually my tires last me 4 or 5 years. What's the deal here? And it's because, yes, these vehicles are harder on tires as we understand them. I'm going to read this little section out of the story from The Atlantic. Quote, "This pollution is the inevitable result of the tire wear that every car owner experiences over time, composed of hundreds of ingredients that can include natural and artificial rubber, petroleum, nylon, and steel. Tires constantly spit out tiny bits of material. Much of it is invisible to the naked eye. The rate at which your tires break down will depend on many factors, but the cumulative quantity of tire pollution, ranging from visible pieces of rubber to nanoparticles, is staggering. As much as 6 million metric tons annually worldwide, according to a report from Imperial College London. Quote, "We are generating an enormous amount of rubberware that ends up in the atmosphere as very small particles or on the road surfaces as large particles that get washed away," end quote, Mark Mason of Imperial College said. Rougher surfaces tend to produce larger tire chunks that settle on the ground, while smoother roadways, such as freshly paved highways, generate minuscule ones that can float in the air for hundreds of feet. Now, I think, end quote, I think that's fascinating because that's effectively saying, actually, rough roads are better. Right? Now, this isn't so...
No, I think they're saying smooth roads are better.
Well, no, they're saying rough roads create larger pieces.
They do.
Where the smoother roads create the nanoparticles.
So they create larger pieces, which means they wear down tires more quickly. And if you think about it, those large chunks that are washed away by rainwater, they still break down into those smaller pieces eventually with erosion and
Well,
time.
it says they can get washed away, and I get that. It's still a concern. But my read on this is they're saying that the big concern are the
airborne particulates?
Right.
Well, yeah, because that's what affects humans the most. Mm-hmm. They're not considering that the damage to the ecosystem may be even worse. It reads as kind of funny to me because, when I was younger, having like rough roads and dirt roads and all this was totally common. Yeah,
I mean, super common. As where now, everything's paved, everything's got to be paved, I got to have a smoother ride, I got to have this. When that actually might be theoretically doing more damage, more environmental damage, having smooth roads.
It's doing more human damage, not environmental.
Human. That's your read.
I mean,
okay.
so paving roads in general, that is an environmental problem. Mm-hmm. I don't want to dismiss the fact that people need it currently to transport goods or to travel or whatever. I recognize that's important. I wish there was a different solution. But anyway, the rougher roads create larger particles, which make the tires break down faster. You're saying you think they're safer because they're not airborne. They're not causing human harm. But they're still creating more particulate overall. Mm-hmm. And it's seeping into the soil. And as the story reads, those particulates do release toxins into the soil, into the waterways, which still end up in us eventually. Right. Because the plants absorb it, or we drink the water, and we eat the plants, and it ends back up in us. But if you ingest it, that's going to cause different problems than if you breathe it in. So like you were saying, if you breathe in these particulates, it could cause some sort of lung cancer or maybe something, tumorous.
Yeah, so not a good idea to live too close to a highway, for one. Okay.
We've known this for a long time, though.
Yeah,
this
for
is
many
just
reasons.
Another reason.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, they make a very strong argument that the amount of nanoparticles from EVs specifically is worse. Like, that is a more dangerous form of pollution than carbon monoxide, right? Or than what comes out of the tailpipe of an internal combustion engine car. And again, this is
because it's a it's a microplastic,
right? And we don't. There's no Earth system, Okay, one of the things that could help with tailpipe pollution: more trees, right?
More plants overall. Yeah,
more plants, like we were just talking about. So each of plants, let's spread this stuff out. Anyway, but plants, okay, can actually solve that. Ironically, this is not something plants can solve, and so I think the overall point, and you can tell me what you think on this. Okay, my overall point is, and especially if more people buy EVs, which the incentives are there, unfortunately, because the government is giving you tax breaks or returns, whatever, on if you buy an EV. The incentives are there to get into this. It's not solving anything. And potentially, especially at scale, it's worse. And also, here's the other problem, okay, is you can say, well, don't worry, the fucking market will solve it. First off, I don't want anyone to ever say that to me again.
The market is the reason that plastic exists.
Yeah.
And as I've said many times, plastic is the worst idea that humans have ever had.
Yes, 100%. And the research, and there's more in this story, I'll link to it in the show notes, shows that 28%, so that's more than a quarter of the ocean microplastics in the oceans. So 28% of ocean plastics are due to car tires. Okay. That's a problem.
Yeah, especially considering how fucking tiny these particulates are.
Right.
Because they can actually travel within biological systems. And, like,
Right.
thinking about a piece of plastic going through my blood-brain barrier
Yes.
just kind of sets me off, you
Yes.
know? Like, I'm not happy about
Right.
that.
Right. No, exactly. Yes. Here's the thing. First, again, like I said, don't ever say to me, the market will solve it. Shut the fuck up. Okay?
Plastic is cheap. That's why it's so prevalent.
Right. Now, yes.
Capitalists.
Yeah, exactly. So, you could say, well, Bridgestone's figuring this out. They're going to make better tires. Here's the problem. Researching this in a lab is incredibly difficult to do. Okay, and the story gets into this. All right, so I'm not going to necessarily rehash it here. But part of the problem is that replicating a lot of this within a lab is a problem. So you're either going to, as to where testing internal combustion and like, okay, what are the emissions coming out of the tailpipe is very easy to work on in a lab environment and has been worked on. This really it's something that they have been trying to solve for a very long time. Okay, doing the research into how do we make better rubber, the only way you can really do that is, pun intended, when the rubber meets the literal road. Okay, the rubber has to meet the road. And so you effectively have to engage in an ass ton of pollution in a non-controlled environment to try and discover this better rubber. Is that worthwhile? You might want to make the argument that that's so. But my point being, I don't know how much I'm going to believe fucking Bridgestone figured out a better tire. Okay? They literally have to reinvent the wheel here. And
yeah, and they're going to transfer those costs onto the market as well. So
sure.
People who want to buy these EV specially designed tires, they're going to have to pay a lot more.
They're already more expensive.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and this is the whole thing, like you brought up with plastics, is that people don't want to pay that. They're just not going to want to. Now, talk a little bit about potentially solutions. Okay? Now, I could get into an entire meta conversation around this, and I don't mean Facebook. You can get into an entire meta conversation around the problem of solutionism. Okay, this is a term people are going to hear a lot from me going forward. Solutionism and long-termism. These are two huge mindset issues that we have. One is that, oh, well, humans can fucking solve everything. No, I don't think time has borne that out at all. Okay, so
no, we just keep digging ourselves into a deeper pit.
Right. And this speaks to a Sovryn Tech X that we did recently, and someone responded about this, which is kind of what brought solutionism sort of to mind for me, was that the issue of like science fiction always saying, oh no, humans can figure out how to do this. We can do anything. We can blah, blah, blah. We can. No, maybe we can't.
Yeah, actually there was a science fiction story I read once where humans did not figure it out. And it was an Isaac Asimov story.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it was called, but it was about the people who lived on a planet with a trinary star system, and the sun never set for them except once every 1,000 years.
Right.
And they all went fucking crazy, and society lost its shit and burned everything to the ground, so, like, the next generation didn't have any of the history of the previous ones.
Yeah, and it just kept happening?
Yeah, every 1,000 years.
Yeah, so, anyway, solutionism is a problem. The belief that somehow, oh, I can fix that. I can fix that. And this is a problem that goes from at every scale. Okay? It goes between individuals, where a person, and I mean, even I struggle with this at times. Maybe it's because of years of conditioning of science fiction or who knows what. Into where, like even you, Ellen, you might express a problem you're having or whatever. And what do most people want to do? They instantly say, well, how can I help you solve that? It's like, no. Maybe you don't need to solve it. Maybe I just need you to hear it.
Yeah,
right?
Sometimes I have to remind you of that.
No, I know.
But when you realize you're doing it, you're very apologetic and responsive, and you understand.
Thank you. Yeah, but I'll instantly say, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm going into solution mode, and you don't need that. And that's exactly what I'll say. And
I love that you recognize that.
Thank you. So, but that's the thing. That scales up.
Yes.
And it's why we have humans have a solution mode is because we've been taught that, oh no, we can fix it. Just with some elbow grease and some good old know-how or whatever, we can make a better tire, and all of this. And no, there's no guarantee of that. And, I guarantee, what I do guarantee is it's never considered in the boardrooms at these companies, at the car companies or whatever, when someone says, that somebody comes out and says, what if we can't solve this? What do we do then? Maybe this isn't resolvable. Maybe EVs are a bad idea. Maybe this or that is a bad idea that never comes up because you're going to get fired. You're going to get kicked out.
Yeah, and I think this sunken cost fallacy is so prevalent in people's minds today that if you were to say that in some sort of large vehicular organizational gathering, I think leaders of these companies would rather sink more money into solving these alleged issues than they would into redesigning the technology from the beginning.
Yeah, totally.
And, when you and I were talking about this, when you initially read this article, I think we were actually driving in the car, funny enough.
Oddly, yeah, ironically.
But I remember saying, just give us the magnetically levitating train. I'll take that everywhere.
Yeah, we'll ride the maglev, right.
At least that isn't going to have a bunch of friction that's generating nanoparticles that are sprayed into the air.
Right.
I don't know how we're going to provide the impulse to get the kinetic motion, moving the train, but I do know that, magnetic levitation is fucking magic.
Yes.
That is incredible that you can utilize that force in order to make things just float and there is no friction. And moving something with no friction is way, way, way easier than moving something that weighs a ton or 2 tons.
Yes. Yeah.
And is touching the road,
right,
rough or smooth.
Right. And ironically, one of the few places you can actually experience maglev transportation is in the Magic Kingdom. So, the Magic Kingdom at Disney. But anyway.
Weird. That's very weird.
Well, just when you said magic, it made me think of that.
Oh,
and, that's the only place I've ever, other than Japan, I guess, that's the only place I've ever ridden a maglev. But yeah, so that's a possibility. And, this is part of my concern with this, is that what's being done is there are groups out there who I think are, and this is not a solution, this is just as bad, okay? There are groups out there who are using this argument against EVs not to prop up the internal combustion engine. It's not like this is the old guard saying, you're wrong, this is not good for the environment, let's go back to the old way. I think their argument is probably not the maglev, but it is public transportation. But public transportation, for that to really work, requires people to be jammed into a box. And I don't mean the box of the bus. I mean into a city. It requires them to be jammed into a human-designed living space.
Well, here's the thing. I think most human beings on this planet, as they prove by living in cities as opposed to living in suburban areas, are fine with that. What they are not fine with, especially in America, where the ego is everything and the individual is everything's about you. Customer is always right. So
it's narcissism, not individualism.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Okay,
yes.
I agree.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that I think in Japan especially, somewhat in Europe, but not at all in America, people have the mindset of working communally together to achieve a greater good. Like I said, in Japan especially, that is a historic mindset. In Europe, I think it exists somewhat.
Yeah.
That people will give up a little bit of individual freedom in order to, act together as a group in a way that achieves a larger goal in a somewhat more efficient way. So, group transportation, if everyone gets on the tram or the bus or whatever, sure, you don't have your own vehicle, you don't have your own personal bubble with all this space where you can like toss your crap and you can listen to your own music as loud as you want to and smoke a cigarette if you want to, or like drink your coffee and spill it everywhere. Like on a bus, you have to like, you know, stay in your space and allow other people to coexist with you.
Sure.
In order to get everyone from A to B in an efficient way.
Sure. I mean, so there's arguments for how you could, without giving up any individuality, there are arguments for how you could have something akin to public transportation that would work, even in a more, potentially a more suburban or rural setting. And I'm somewhat open to those. You know, like years ago, I had, I feel terrible, I can't think of his last name. The guy who's the head of MaidSafe, David... I can't think of it. Anyway, great, you know, very interesting guy. And we were talking about how, you know, and certainly people who are into EVs have also brought this point up, that you don't really need to own a car. Some people do. Some people, it's their business, right? Like it's akin to their business. They have to haul, they have to do whatever that happens to be. But most people don't need to own a car. They need a car when they need it, but, you know, it's not like they need a car 24/7, right? And so the idea that if you had autonomous vehicles or quasi-autonomous vehicles, that you could basically just like have a vehicle show up, it's yours for the hour or two, you know, and then you could have far less vehicles on the road, right? And you just have the vehicle when you need it.
So it's like renting a car.
It's kind of like renting. It's sort of like a hyper-automated version of Uber in a way, you know, and these are intriguing things to explore. Problem is, most of these technologies, including EVs, they almost are all reliant upon urban settings to really work and to do what they do, you know. And there's very good reasons for that, in the sense that, you know, like you need that many more data points for these things to work. You know, you need like that information density that can only happen when people live together, you know, that crowded or whatever, to really make it happen. Because the first 90% of any technological development is easy. It's that last 10% that's really hard. And that's why we don't have like automated vehicles, you know, going around Montana, right? Because it just doesn't, there's not enough information density there for that to work. And there's also snow and other things that are a problem. Anyway, yeah, I hear you that it's a possibility. I mean, I hate the idea of living in cities, you know, like that's, or cities as we understand them today are a massive problem, right?
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, they're an environmental disaster in and of themselves, you know, to say nothing of a mental one. And I mean, I know I have listeners who are totally down with cities and love living in them and, you know, rock and roll. Like, okay, you know, I'm not here to like really argue against that. To some degree, it comes down to what the individual's comfortable with. But anyway, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, I'm just agreeing with you. I mean, I
Sure.
think I would go crazy if I lived in a city.
Right.
I need a lot of space and time to myself. Not
Yeah.
that I necessarily have a problem with other people taking up space near me. It's just that I like to have control over my environment to some extent.
Sure.
And that generally, like, I would prefer to exclude a lot of vehicles, a lot of pollution, you know, people like
Right.
screaming and crying and
Right.
animals, and it's all just like too stimulating for me, I think.
Yeah.
Especially growing up in an urban area, it was very out in the sticks. Like,
Yeah.
I find peace and comfort in the sounds of nature and being separate
Yeah.
from that large mass of people. And maybe it's part of the mentality of people that live in cities. Maybe it's just the overstimulation, or, you know, it could be a combination of those things. But there's peace in tranquility in living away from that.
Yeah.
So some people don't feel that. Some people feel the opposite.
Right. Well, now, and that speaks to a point you were bringing up earlier, which I think is valid. Like, what you were arguing for earlier, how, well, in parts of Europe or in Japan or whatever, you know, this idea of public transportation, things like that, it's second nature. Like, well, sure, that's fine, right? And I think, or the idea of we'll come together to solve a problem.
Yes.
And ignore what other parts of the globe would consider to be individual freedoms, right? They don't see it that way. Now, I've talked about this a bunch of times. There's great research. I think even James C. Scott's talked about this, though I could be wrong about that. But I've brought it up a few times, that you have civilizations, cultures that have grown up, and Japan would be a great example, where the primary crop is rice. And then you have whole other parts of the world where the primary crop is wheat. Now, wheat is something that can be harvested by the individual, granted through the help of livestock or through the help of animals, okay? But it can be done by the individual, and you can own a lot of it, and a lot of people are out of your way. As to where with rice, no. Rice is a communal gathering. It's communal farming. And it has to be, or at least until the mechanical rice picker that did something to Spock's ears. Some people will get that joke. At least until something like that came around. No, like rice harvesting was a communal project. And so the idea that there are other areas of the planet, again, where rice is the bigger deal, it is interesting that these things, these platitudes that you were talking about, happen there, are a thing there. As to where ones that are more wheat-based seem to be more what we would conventionally call individualistic. And so, what's the issue? It's not that the Japanese are communists. It's that this idea of, no, we really have to work together to eat is part and parcel of how their cultures evolved. Like, it's just there. It's not communism. It's a part of how they, how that grew. Go ahead. What do you got?
Yeah, I think another interesting part of this, too, is that the way that Japanese people historically built their houses was with rice paper.
Yes.
So they didn't have privacy in the home.
Right.
They had to cultivate privacy in their own minds.
Yes.
And that is how they coped with having that lack of space from other people.
Yeah, well, in fact, it's funny. We've been watching Neon Genesis Evangelion, the anime. And there's a point where, in that, I don't know if you and I saw this episode together, because I've watched the show a few times previously, but there's a point where the German character, she's like, how do you people live without locked doors? And she's screaming at them about it. Because,
it was the sliding door.
Yeah, it's the sliding door.
She thought the sliding door was stupid because she couldn't slam it shut.
Right. She's complaining about her privacy. But this just speaks to it. Again, they're not communists. It's a different culture. And part of that, I think, you could even go so far back as to the difference between harvesting wheat and harvesting rice. It's a fascinating idea. Anyway, yeah, so they're well, I'll be the first to say, and have been on the show, there's a lot we could learn from the Japanese. So,
what do you mean? You just bought a truck so that you can haul your giant balls around.
Look, my ego is the size of
of Texas.
It's the only way I can get around. Anyway.
12 miles to the gallon.
Oh, it gets better than that. Well, all right, but okay.
I might be exaggerating for your truck, but not for every truck.
Yeah, okay. But all right, so let's talk about actual solutions here. And I'm even willing to be a little middle of the road. Okay. You mentioned earlier, you raised a great point, that monocropping is a massive problem, and it really is.
Yes.
Okay. Go watch the documentary King of Corn, not King of Porn, King of Corn, and you are going to get, a wake-up call like you wouldn't believe on what's going on.
Or watch the documentary The Future of Food.
Yes.
It's about Monsanto.
There you go. Yeah. So, one thing, and I know there's justified pushback on this. Okay, one thing that I think could, at least in the interim, solve the problem far better than EVs can, because they're not actually a solution. But if we were to look for one, honestly, I think flex fuel, and this is most popular in trucks, but going with E85, where it's 85% ethanol, and then 15% gas. Now, I know that ethanol destroys mechanical parts. It destroys engines, okay, in a much shorter time frame. But personally, you can far easier make a bunch of E85 engines, okay. Cars, you could convert cars to E85, I think, and you'd be able to finally do something with the fucking insane piles of corn that exist in the Midwest.
Ethanol can be made from any plant matter.
Right. Well, that's true. Okay. But then here's the thing, is that I think the argument is far better for going to E85, at least for now, until maybe we get nuclear power plants built again or whatever, then, or, I mean, maglev, I'm there. You believe me, I'm so instantly sold on the concept of maglev, you have no idea.
Yeah, that does require a whole infrastructure to be built, so I recognize that there's a challenge to implementation there.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of alcohol as a use for fuel is great. I mean, I even published this story in one of the previous editions of the Sovryn Technica newsletter by Mother Earth News. They wrote this great article about how you can actually create your own ethanol fuel.
Right.
And it's just the same as making vodka or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just you use what plants you have around.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, and you know this, when we were looking for a truck for me, and I mean, our idea was like, you have a little Mazda 3, which is a great commuter. Killer. Yep. Great commuter.
Yeah, like 26 miles to the gallon.
Yeah, hyper efficient car. Yeah. No, it really is. Very small. Whatever.
I can park anywhere.
Exactly, which is nice sometimes when we're going to these concerts.
Actually, at the DreamSonic concert, I parked between two giant ass trucks.
Yeah.
And like we were making jokes about this because like trucks can't park next to each other when they're that big because it's like crossing streams when you're peeing or something.
Yeah. Like I said, it's like it's sword fighting. It's two dicks crossing each other, and you can't have that.
But my tiny little car can squeeze right in between.
Yep. It's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So. Okay, so when I was looking for a truck, I mean, again, we got a truck because I don't really need, I mean, the thing is, it's just like I talked about earlier. When I need a car, I need a car. But we've lived as a single car, unit for years.
We are a family unit.
Yeah, we are. And we've never really desperately needed a second car. No. There are times, though, where it'd be nice, say when one car is getting worked on, or if there's an emergency, or if I've got to handle this or that, or, in recent times, like maybe I've got to go to work here, whatever, like it got to a point where, okay, we need a second car, or it's a good idea to have a second car.
Yeah, I don't want you to be trapped at home all the time while I'm at work 10 hours a day.
I don't either. So I don't have to drive far, or often, for that matter, okay? So that's one thing to keep in mind. But the first truck I was looking at was a Ford F-250. And why I was looking at the F-250 is because it is a flex fuel vehicle. I'm like, no, E85 is a very good thing, as a compromise, I guess. It's a very good thing. And I was going to go for that. But then I was researching, okay, where can I get E85 gas? Fucking nowhere. Or fuel, I should say.
Yeah.
You can't get not in New England anyway. You have to go to Massachusetts. And so it just didn't make any sense to have that. And then especially for it to be a giant honking F-250, so. Well,
someday if I have my way, we're going to have a lot of land, and I'm going to grow many plants.
Right.
And with the remnants of those plants, we can make our own alcohol, and we'll do whatever fucking ridiculous shit additives that the government forces us to put in there.
Right.
But we could just make the mechanical tweak to the engine to allow it to use that alcohol as fuel.
Yeah. Now, again, I know, like I said, I know the arguments against E85 or against alcohol as fuel. I know what it does to engines. I know that it doesn't burn as efficiently as gas, as straight gas. I get these arguments.
But look where it's made.
Well, right. Right.
We can make it literally in our backyard.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I think, so for me, as far as right now, what do you do? What is the solution right this second? It is not EVs. They are, in fact, compounding the problem. They're making it worse.
Yeah, I think you've said this before, but if everybody decided to switch to an electric vehicle tomorrow...
Power grid would shut down.
Yeah, they couldn't.
Yeah.
There's not even enough EVs.
Yeah, in a heartbeat, it would shut down. Like, I mean, instantaneous. Like, you can't. These are not, they're not practical. There's no pragmatic argument for them. They are a problem, not a solution. I'm just saying that, like, definitively. And I think, again, for me, the best thing and there's other alternative fuel options, sure, that certainly might be worth exploration. And I'm not arguing like the Ford Nucleon, which was an idea in the 60s that you just put a mini nuclear reactor in the back of the car. But
And how much concrete?
Yeah, right. And how heavy is that fucker? Talk about nanoparticles getting everywhere. Anyway, but for me, I think looking at E85 is like right now what exists, what you can do is more the solution. But that requires gas stations, having it, offering it. And
How about hot air balloon?
well, I mean, we can do horse and buggy.
Yes! Oh my gosh, let's get some horses.
Yeah, get wooden wheels and you're fine. There's no nanoparticle issue then, but...
No, the wooden wheels, actually, I think that was great. We should have stuck with those.
Yeah. So, actually, like, original internal combustion engine cars did have wooden wheels.
So did bicycles.
Like wooden and metal, yeah. Anyway... I wanted to bring this up. You and I talked about it, Ellen, and I wanted to bring it up because I want to be like, look, this is what I've been saying. These EVs, stop kidding yourself that you think you're doing something better for the environment, or that you're somehow putting an end to the death of little brown kids in the Middle East or something. You are not solving shit with these. There are what you could argue are more homegrown solutions. And I didn't even get into, one of the real ways to solve this whole problem. Like, okay, so say we hit peak oil. Again, E85 is still 15% gas, right? But you're stretching it out that much further, of course. But one of the real ways to solve this, just put an end to a fucking standing military, in just about every country on the planet.
Yes.
And
amen.
Yeah, and that'll stop so much. I mean, you're worried about pollution. The biggest polluter on the planet is the U.S. military. Flat out. And
they use so much oil and gasoline just to travel up and down the coasts, protecting us, patrolling.
Sure. I mean, how much fucking fuel are they using? Just fire up an F-35 and forget it. So, this is where I get pissed off when you get liberals and other people who are like, oh yeah, we got to stop the use of fossil fuels. And they're looking at consumers. They're looking at they're yelling at truck drivers. It's like, leave the truck driver the fuck alone, okay? Like, and I am as well. I'm leaving truck driver. Believe me, I'm one of you now. Like, leave the truck driver alone.
Oh, I thought you were talking about like 18-wheelers or something.
Well, I mean that's another thing, but whatever. Like, leave the consumer alone. You go after the U.S. military first and foremost. If you're concerned about the environment and you're concerned about pollution. They are the number one. Yeah, but my rights. But we got to be protected. From what? For fuck's sake, and especially if you're a truck driver, you're driving an urban assault vehicle on your own anyway. What the hell are you worried about? So...
There's people out there that are jealous of our freedoms.
Yeah. Unreal. And so... I mean, that ultimately, that's the real problem, and any time this shit comes up, and it's the same thing. I mean, just about any problem you can think of, the real problem is not the individuals, it's not the citizens, it's the U.S. military every single time.
All
You're
right.
concerned about welfare? Fuck that. Give the people all the money they want. The real problem is the U.S. military is a bunch of welfare queens. Anyway, that's another conversation. Please go.
I'm just thinking, reduce that back to its most essential form. What is the real problem? Is the human impulse to violence.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
That is what makes people want to have a military in the first place. Mm-hmm. For retribution and for protection in a violent manner.
Yeah.
And for domination. Let's not forget that.
Yeah.
People will never say it, but they want to dominate.
Yeah.
They do. They want to be number one.
Yeah.
And I think that's the real problem that we all have to heal within ourselves.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. There are very core issues, obviously, with this. But, these are, again, people talk about what are the solutions? All these people who claim to be so concerned, about the environment or about this and about that. And they're like, oh, no, it's got to start with us. No, it needs to start with dismantling the U.S. military, and police forces and so many other things. Like, stop blaming the wrong people, and also stop thinking that somehow these giant mega corporations give a rat's fucking ass about the environment or about you or whatever, and they're like, oh, EVs are the solution, EVs are this, and no. What do you got?
Well, I still think that comes back to the individual.
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. I mean, it can come back to us demanding better, but again, know where to point the finger. And it's not at each other. It's really, like at some of these insane institutions.
Yeah, and essentially I understand what you're saying. I just feel like the approach is a little harsh. Like, the best that we can do to change the world is to help other people see the ways in which they need to heal and to grow.
Sure.
And pointing a finger is just making people angry or shaming people. And
yeah, I do mean that somewhat metaphorically, but yeah, point taken. No pun intended there.
I'm just sharing my thoughts.
Yeah,
all.
no, thank you. Yes. Yeah. It's all lies. No. Yeah. So, or at least here we'll put, and I think I might make T-shirts out of this. The Sovryn Technica store is opening very, very soon, and I want to make the T-shirt that says the EV is a lie. What do you think? Is that a winner?
I don't know. I think I'd have to see it. I'm excited to see the Sovryn Technica store again.
Yeah.
That's an exciting development.
Yep.
I wonder what inspired that thought.
Somebody started playing with Photoshop and came up with some kick-ass designs, which if you want to see them, you got to go on Instagram.
Oh my god. I feel like such an idiot, but at the same time, I've been having the time of my life with Photoshop.
Yeah.
And I'm never going back.
Yeah. You've made some cool shit.
Man, I came up with this stupid ass idea. I was like, what if there was a logo that was of Peter Jurassic, but it was Jurassic Park, because
right.
like Peter Jurassic plays Lando Malari in Babylon 5.
Woo.
And like he's basically one of the greatest characters on that show, although
yes.
he's like kind of evil and you're not supposed to really like him throughout the story, but
you
he's
can't help it.
Such a charismatic being.
Yes.
Like you love him,
yes.
even though you hate him.
Yes.
But like Babylon 5, he really treated that as his playground.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, like, it's Jurassic Park, because he owned that station.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I spent an entire freaking day on Photoshop making this, my vision of Jurassic Park, the logo. And Brian saw it immediately. He was like, hey, what if you made that like black and white and then we could put it on a t-shirt?
And it looks great. It's dynamite. It's pure dynamite.
And like nobody's gonna buy this except sci-fi nerds.
Yeah, but it's perfect. Go ahead.
I mean, just such a small percentage of sci-fi nerds even know what Babylon 5 is.
Yeah, but it might be the perfect time for it, and I'll say why. Because, so me, and you know this about me, Ellen, and longtime Sovryn Technica listeners know this about me. I mean, I live and breathe Babylon 5. Like, it's just a part of my being, and it always has been. But now it's in the popular consciousness because the new movie's coming out in August. And they just announced yesterday, as of this recording, in July of 2023, they just announced that the original series is going to come out on Blu-ray in December of 2023. And of course, I'm there. Like, fuck yeah, sign me up.
Get these t-shirts made.
Right, well, that's what I'm saying, is that it's out there now. This might be the perfect time to have Jurassic Park, because I think you pronounce his name Peter Jurassic.
Okay,
but
Jurassic.
But still, it's great. Jurassic Park. It when you read it, it works, and it just the whole idea works. And Lando has such a notable visage that you get it the instant you see it.
He's basically the equivalent of the T-Rex on the Jurassic Park logo.
Yes. Yeah. So this is going to be great. Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't wait. And who knows? It might even turn into a series of shirts where it could be like Jurassic Park, or Jurassic Park 2, The Lost Jakar. And you could have like Jakar looking like the Dilophosaurus or something. You know what I mean? That'd be so great because he's already a lizard.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
We'll see.
And he's the great character. I got to get him on a t-shirt somehow, even if it's just something funny like that. I love Jakar. Okay, so that's a great note to end on. Stuff to get excited for, folks.
Yes.
And Yeah, but I'm gonna run this by you. The EV is a lie. That needs to be a T-shirt.
I don't know about the need, but like that is a message that needs to be spread.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah. All right.
Yes.
Okay, we're gonna do it. Ellen. Anyway, thank you for being on for another episode of Sovryn Tech X.
So glad to be back.
Yeah, and I think we talked a lot of great shit. I wasn't going to say I think we solved all the world's problems. No, actually, one of the biggest problems in the world is people trying to solve the world's problems.
Yeah, and just for the record, we are both full of shit, and we acknowledge that.
Yeah, and it's what...
And you are too.
Yes, and it's what the plants crave.
It is.
So, they want our shit, so eat more plants. Okay, there we go. That's it for this episode of Sovryn Tech X. We will see all of you on the other side. Testing. 1, 2, 3...
Woo.
Wow. That was manly.
I'm gonna have to pee like a racehorse in an hour. I just drank a cup of coffee and half of this can of seltzer.
The full saying is pee like a Russian racehorse.
Why Russian?
Because it's Russian.
'Cause European?
Too many puns. That's it. Off.